Welcome into another edition of Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall, along with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. Senator, pleasure to be with you again.
Good afternoon.
All right, busy time at the Indiana State House. We are rolling. The House has passed their form of budget, which we'll get into a little bit here today. But we start with what is, I know, very near and dear to your heart, dealing with prescription drug abuse, trying to protect Hoosiers. You guys have passed some pretty significant legislation out of the Senate.
I think so. We set out this year to start the session with killing heroin in 5 years, and the first installment of it. And we've talked about on this show treatment. We've talked about recovery. We've talked about prevention. We've talked about data collection. Now we're talking about prescription reform. And we all know that the opioid issue, you have heroin, but you also have pain. And you have situations where somebody has had surgery and they were prescribed opioids, and then the opioids were shut off. And they went on to heroin. And so what we're trying to do now is we're trying to get a handle on opioids being prescribed by physicians. Now, physicians have the goodness in their heart. It's something that they want to make sure that their patients aren't feeling pain. However, they agree, the doctors agree, and hospitals agree that we need to have some sort of reform, and Senate Bill 226 represents that.
Want to thank our sponsor for the Capitol Happenings, and Capitol Happenings is presented by Innovative Health Solutions. Innovative Health Solutions is an Indiana-based company that has developed the Bridge, a non-narcotic alternative which gives those suffering from addiction the edge they need to minimize or even eliminate the crushing pain of heroin withdrawal. Their website is i-h.s.com. We also want to thank our home radio station, which you can now hear us every Saturday morning, 8:30. That's WYRZ 98.9 out of Hendricks County, WYRZ 98.9. You'll be able to hear us on FM airwaves, and we'll be podcast there as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this issue. That you touched on something that's very crucial in terms of dealing with this very complicated issue. How do you protect people who have legitimate injuries, legitimate pain, legitimate problems, and how do you separate those people from those who are abusing the system?
As well as protecting children. What Senate Bill 226 does, it establishes that if you're a first-time prescriber from a doctor prescribing an opioid for the first time with a patient, that prescription can only be 7 days. There are a lot of exceptions with palliative care, hospice, and several other issues. But what we're trying to do is limit the dispensing or prescribing of opioids. And for those that are concerned that you may be on opioids, it's the first prescription from the prescriber, and that would be 7 days, along with the exception of that a doctor can use their personal judgment, their professional judgment. And so if you have to travel 2 hours to see your doctor and you can't do it, he or she cannot file that prescription over the phone, the essence here is that the doctor can say, Mrs. Smith has to travel 3 hours from home and can't be back here for 3 weeks. He or she, the doctor, can prescribe 3 weeks if it's their professional judgment that it's very necessary. So we've put that out there.
It seems to be an ever-moving target, too, because obviously Inspect, the prescription drug monitoring program from the state of Indiana, was the sort of the initial line of defense on this, but it's very hard to keep track and try to stay ahead of people that are, while using oftentimes their powers for bad, are very smart people and know how to manipulate the system.
Oh, they're very, very intelligent, and there's either pharmacy shopping or doctor shopping. I have another bill that allows a prescriber and their patient to have a pain contract, and they check a box, and so that the patient can't go to another pharmacy and use the same pain contract. Only one pharmacy for that patient. You have to. It's like whack-a-mole. You have to be on the constant watch for different ways that people are getting opioids on the open market.
Again, the program is Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall, along with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. One of the things you have this year is a very willing partner in the governor, Eric
Yes.
Holcomb. You maybe didn't have that the last few years. What does it mean to have Governor Holcomb on board with this?
Well, it's fantastic. Governor Pence did initiate his drug task force, which started us on our way. But we talked to Eric just recently, and the Chief Justice.
What a great guy.
Yeah, and Eric is a wonderful person, and the Chief Justice, Rush, she was a fantastic guest of ours as well. And both of them are dead set with us to kill heroin in 5 years. And Governor Holcomb, I talk to him all the time about it. And this bill, Senate Bill 226, is something that he cares very deeply about.
When you sit down with the governor, because obviously everybody wants the governor's attention, and it's everything from roads to schools to, as you're talking about, dealing with prescription drug abuse, how do you grab the governor's attention to say, hey, we need you to use that bully pulpit to make this a big issue?
Well, it's interesting because he spent 106 days on the road just as a governor candidate. Before that was the U.S. Senate. And so it's not hard to get his attention. We'll text back and forth at 11 o'clock and talking about the committee session that's going to be happening the next day. And he's right on top of what's going on in the legislature. So it's not hard at all to capture his attention. He feels very, very serious and deeply about this issue and has seen so many families that have been crushed by this. And so he is the leader of our team.
Take us through the process of how this bill moves forward, because obviously what we do here is we take everybody inside state government,
yes.
show them different things, and over the next couple of weeks, I'd imagine we're going to start getting into the budget. Mm-hmm. But as we have a little time here, do you hear testimony from people? How does this start? How does it work its way to where it's passed through the Indiana Senate?
You know, it's interesting you asked that because it's a great question. Jordan Rose is my assistant. And as you know, she keeps me going directly the right way. And she is we'll have 16 or 17 opioid bills that'll pass the Senate this year, which is an enormous amount of bills in total. We filed 34 this year in all different types of bills. But you get a hearing in a committee from a committee chairman that the bill has been assigned to. But what goes into it is meeting with the hospital association, meeting with the state medical association, meeting with people who help you understand what goes on in their profession, and they're all supportive of this prescription reform, which is so very helpful. I don't have to fight a doctor. I don't have to fight a hospital because we collaborated with them and we got what they needed to make it a good bill, and it's an outstanding bill. And so right now it's passed committee. It's past second reading, so it can't be amended now. On third reading on Monday, we will pass the Senate. And I'm meeting with Cindy Kirchhofer on Monday, who chairs the Health Committee, so she understands where all the bills that we've sent them are coming from and who supports them and how broad base the support actually is. And we've worked really hard to iron out a lot of the problems that might be in this bill that aren't now.
There are more than 1,200 bills when we start between the House and the Senate. Do bills like this sometimes, now maybe not this bill because you've done a great job of getting it to the forefront of people's minds, but do good bills sometimes die just because there's so much for everybody to get through?
Yes, that's a very good question because I've had several bills that didn't reach the committee chairman's desk, or if they did, that person decided not to hear them because of time, and as well as there are bills I've had in front of the Senate that failed in front of the Senate. So the death of a bill can be by so many different ways, including time or matter that people disagree with, and the whole idea is to get a majority out of the committee hearing and then get a majority out of the Senate and then push it on the House and see how you can find a majority over there.
Again, the program is Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall, along with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. I want to welcome in our home radio station. Those of you listening there, 98.9 WYRZ. We'll be picking up affiliates here very soon as well. You're all over the place. Like every time I turn on the news or something, I see you. And one of the bills that we have touched on in the past, I'd like to go back to it because it is a big deal, is this bill that's designed to keep dangerous people or predators out of schools.
Yes.
And that was sort of inspired by what a lot of people felt was a very bad sentence for an educator who did some pretty bad things. Where's that bill at, and how are we moving forward?
Well, Senate Bill 34 is moving forward. It has passed the Senate, and it will be sponsored over in the House by Representative Boehning. And all we're trying to do is keep predators out of our schools. That should be simple enough. But what this bill does, it allows the school corporations that 20% of all their teachers and employees pass background checks over the next 5 years. So you have everyone that has passed the background check. Do you know, though, lots of schools have been doing this for the last 2 or 3 years, and there aren't a whole lot of background check vendors. And so it takes some time, but I find this to be reprehensible that you can't pick up the newspaper. Probably once a week you can see in the newspaper where someone has gotten in trouble that is an employee from a school corporation, and we just can't have that.
What do you do? Because obviously you're always on defense. I remember talking one time to a chief of police, and he was saying that really no matter what we do, we being police department, we're always on defense. We try to be on offense. We try to be visible, but really we're always playing defense. How do you take this sort of issue and make it an offensive issue versus trying to respond to, will this happen? Now we've got to punish this person.
Right. Well, what we have to do, we have to be vigilant. The parents have to be vigilant. The other employees have to be vigilant. This background check can just go so far. If somebody gets in trouble over the weekend, more than likely someone at the school corporation is not going to hear about it. And so it's a team sport and keeping our kids safe from when you put them on the school bus until when you get them off a school bus. And so it's we can just do so much, and hopefully that people keep vigilant and if you see something, say something and report it immediately.
How much feedback do you get from constituents on a bill like this? Now, this bill obviously requires the background checks from the school corporations. Do they weigh in on this? I mean, I'm sure because it's going to affect them, you hear from the superintendents and teachers.
Mm-hmm. Well, the major issue that I've heard about is the cost, and we have made that a local decision. If the teacher or the employee, if it's their turn to be in a background check and a background check hasn't been made on them, the school corporation has to make a decision if they're going to pay for it or if the employee is going to pay for it. That's been the major conversation piece. I think we all think and we all know that in a background check, regardless if you're a volunteer or the principal of the school or the school corporation superintendent, everyone should be checked, and no one's really disagree with that. It's how you pay for it. It's the bottom line, so to speak.
Yeah, not to be an old-timer person here, but I remember when I was in school, and that wasn't that long ago, but elementary school, like they were just thrilled if parents wanted to be involved because to an extent it still is very hard to get parents involved. So how do you measure that thing of saying, let's not make it too difficult to get parents who want to help out in schools be involved, yet at the same time make sure that we have quality people that are doing that?
Well, it is a fine line. And, when I was in school, I'm 57 years old. I mean, we didn't.
You don't look a day over 40.
We didn't even think about it back then. But times change. You read the newspaper, you watch TV, and there is a constant situation. We know about the counselor from the city of Annapolis. She has 6 years of home detention. And she's not even on the sex offense registry list. And so, it's something that we need to monitor and keep control over as much as we can, and provide as much cover and safety in the code as possible for those kids that we love so much.
Again, a reminder, our program, Capital Happenings, which keeps you informed of what's going on in Indiana government. There really is no show like this.
No, there is not.
In terms of transparency for government and what's going on. We're literally sitting here with Senator Merritt, and he talks about whatever we want to talk about. The program is presented by Innovative Health Solutions. Innovative Health Solutions is an Indiana-based company that has developed the Bridge, a non-narcotic alternative which gives those suffering from addiction the edge they need to minimize or even eliminate the crushing pain pain of heroin withdrawal. Their website is i-h-s.com. All right, elephant in the room. Of course, we got to talk about it because it's all anybody's talking about. The House has passed a roads funding plan. Last time we visited on Capitol Happenings, you kind of said we're going to see what the House passes, then it'll come to us and we'll talk about it. Senator Kendall weighed in on this, expressed a lot of reservations of what was about to pass. What do you think?
I think I'm going to be really curious. This second half of the session is going to be fascinating because I'm going to be following my 16 or 17 opioid bills over in the House, along with trying to keep a track of a cigarette tax increase, a gas tax increase, and a budget that is 60% education. And the people in Hamilton Southeastern and Lawrence Township schools have care very much about that, who are large constituents of mine. And so it's going to be an interesting second half of the session. The roads bill, we know from experience that our roads need repair, and we need a 10-year diagram, if you will, of a roadmap for roads. And so it'll be interesting what happens. I believe that we're going to probably start right away, and you have Senator Crider, who's the chairman of the Transportation Committee, along with Senator Kendall, who's the Appropriations, and as well as Senator Hirschman. So we will have people working on that, and that's really what happens when a bill comes across, a House bill comes across, meaning the budget, roads bill, cigarette tax, or whatever. That will go directly to committee, and the people in the committee will start working on it. And I don't get too excited about anything until it passes committee.
You don't get too excited about anything ever, do you?
No, I try not to, because people pay me to be calm and cool about these things. But the road,
you're way better at this than I would be.
Well, the road bill will be fascinating because we all know that we need a plan. It's just what happens in that plan, and how do we give, how much strength do we give the governor, how much strength do we give NDOT, and also how much overview do we give the legislature. So it's a soup with a lot of different ingredients in it. And
right now it's an expensive soup.
It is an expensive soup, and I'm anxious to hear from constituents because I'm sure they've been talking to Representative Bosma, Representative Houston, and I'm anxious to hear people from my Senate district how they feel about it.
Is the challenge for you, because you're represent a pretty affluent area, and obviously, 10 cents a gallon is 10 cents a gallon, whether you live in a rural area or in a highly affluent area. Mm-hmm. Is the challenge to find the sweet spot of saying, hey, while this may not overly impact well-off people, we got to think of the people that aren't as well-off too, and trying to find that balance of building better roads yet still protecting and making sure that single mother can get to work?
That's exactly right. And what responsibilities do we have with tolling? What responsibilities do we have on putting more lanes on 65 and all the rest of the highways that we've got in the state? So limited access highways. We've done a really good job of improving 65. We've done a really good job of rebuilding 31. I have all the expectations that 69 will be done someday, and you'll be married. Your kids will be in college. But anyway, we've got a big chore in front of us with this funding bill for the future of our roads and our highways. And our bridges. Yeah. And so it's very important. I plan on paying a lot of attention to it.
Again, our guest, our co-host guest, Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt with us, Capitol Happenings program. I'm Rob Kendall. Thanks for being with us. Just a reminder, there are so many different ways you can see us now or listen to us. Of course, we're on YouTube. You can check out the show there. You just search under Central Indiana Today. You can check us out on SoundCloud or iTunes if you're one of those people that actually likes to work at work and you can't be watching video. Just search Central Indiana Today. You'll find the show labeled there. And then, of course, we're also on WIRZ 98.9. We'll be adding other radio stations to the program, to our list as well as we go along. I want to circle back real quick to the roads bill. One of the things that came out of the House was an idea of a cigarette tax. Do you think we'll ever see a day where we've sort of phased out smoking in the state of Indiana? Because eventually it'll get to a price point where people just can't afford to do it anymore, and I guess maybe that's the goal.
Well, I think it's one of the goals, but it's also gold because of the money that comes from it. I'm not familiar. $100, $200, $300 million is being bandied about a dollar a pack more. And you want that to go towards health care if that's actually going to happen. Last year, there was some situations where they're trying to fund our road plan through cigarette taxes, and I was never really able to understand and follow the bouncing ball on that. But this year, it seems like it's going to be placed towards health care, and I'm anxious to start looking at the stats to see what a dollar will give and what the plans are. When we had the initial, it went to HIP, and everybody supported that because it was health care. But should be a fascinating time in the next 6 weeks.
One of the things you guys did last year that I thought was great from the Senate side, because the House passed something similar to this last year, you guys came in and said, look, we're not raising taxes. If the locals want to fund their roads, we're going to give them the ability to do it because they can deal with the constituency. They will deal with the ramifications. They can say thumbs up or thumbs down. Mm-hmm. What have you guys gotten feedback on that last year from locals? Because that really came out of you guys on the Senate, and I thought it was a great thing. Let the people who actually know where the local roads need improvement make that decision.
Well, in some instances, that was a terrific idea. In other instances, like Indianapolis, they pocketed the money for their budget, so not so good. In the streets in Indianapolis need a lot of help, regardless of how much money Ballard spent on them. Mayor Ballard spent on them. They still continually need help, and bridges as well. And so I think that was successful in some ways. Others, they didn't use the money for roads, and it was explicitly for that. Yeah.
Well, speaking of roads, another huge issue is mass transit.
Right.
And that's something that it ebbs and flows, the intensity of whether we're going to pass it, going to do it, not going to do it. It's not really so much on the radar this year outside of the city of Indianapolis. What are your thoughts on mass transit, and do you see a time where the state's going to get back involved in the idea of mass transit?
I see mass transit being a local issue, just like we allowed Indianapolis to have a referendum. It passes. Now it's in front of the city county council, and who knows what's going to happen. But with the plans for local, I really believe that this state of Indiana will probably continually allow referendums to happen, but it be expensed and be monitored by local government, and that's probably the way it should be.
Again, speaking with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt, program is Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall. Thanks for joining us. One of the things that people have kept an eye on, and you mentioned schools earlier, there is a proposal out there to simplify school funding. We have heard a lot about the silos, about you can use money for this, you can't use it for that. That really hurts and hampers a lot of school systems. There's a proposal out there to really simplify the spending code basically for schools. I'm curious if you've been following that at all and where you think that's going to go.
Well, through the years there have been silos, and you could only spend money in this bucket for utilities, or you could only spend money in this bucket for capital, for building. And the reason that happened is because what we just talked about with Indianapolis, pocketing the money for paving into their rainy day fund. And so you can see why state government is so leery of giving freedom to entities like a school corporation, because what happens if they overspend? The state's going to have to come in and help them. And so we just had a piece of legislation just recently rescuing the Gary School Corporation. And because of situations they had gotten themselves into, we'll be very careful in not upsetting those silos, because they are there for a reason. They're not there to trap a school corporation. They're there to protect them from themselves. And that may go over tough with some people that are on school boards, but we've seen this before. We've seen this movie before.
The other big there's a couple of big ones, but the other monster bill right now, education related, deals with making the state superintendent an appointed official as opposed to an elected official. Your thoughts on that?
I go back and forth on this. There are good points on both sides, and what I think if it was a perfect world, I'd allow Jennifer, Dr. McCormick, to run one more time and have it finished in 2025. I don't think that's going to be placed in front of me. I think I'm going to have the option of saying it's appointed after Dr. McCormick's term is over, or it's continually voted on in elected spots. And I do believe that you need to take the politics out of schools. And so if I had to push that button right now, I would vote for it being an appointed position because the governor sets the policy, sets the plan for all of the budget, including 60% of it is school funding. So that person in the future ought to have the ability to do that, and the legislature help with policy.
Is this vote sort of a reaffirmation of what the role of the superintendent is? Because we saw, at least the last 4 years, Glenda Ritz very combative with the legislature and the governor in terms of policy. And really, at the end of the day, the legislature and the governor will reaffirm, if they make it an appointed position, no, your job is to enact the will that we set forward.
And that's what I've always thought about the superintendent, is not making policy, but explaining it and fulfilling it. And so in that vein, it should be appointed, and should not be a political spot, which it ended up being a political football, and pretty nasty and bitter at that. And no one's hurt more than our children with that, and we don't want that.
Yeah, it's like I've used this analogy before. It's like a pro wrestling cage match. It's fun for the spectators, but it's a nightmare for you guys, and it's a nightmare for the people that it's supposed to impact. So really, other than being good media coverage, it doesn't help anybody. It
sends terrible messages, and I would imagine a principal or school corporation superintendent really doesn't know which way to go and who's in charge. And so that really lends to the fact that it should be appointed, and the governor should be in charge of education policy.
All right, let's close with this. We've got another big week ahead of us. What are we going to see until next time when we're sitting here on Capitol Happenings next week? What's ahead?
Well, we've got several bills. Like I said, Senate Bill 226, which is prescription reform. We've got several pieces of legislation that have proposals in them to take care of dependent babies, newborns, NAS babies, among many other things that are good public policy that have been developed in our different committees. But this week will be a very, very busy week, and the following week will be a very busy week because we'll be finishing up Senate bills and getting ready for the budget to come over.
Just a reminder, Capitol Happenings is presented by Innovative Health Solutions. Innovative Health Solutions is an Indiana-based company that has developed The Bridge, a non-narcotic alternative which gives those suffering from addiction the edge they need to minimize or even eliminate the crushing pain of heroin withdrawal. Their website is i-h.s.com. Well, Senator Merritt, going to put another bow on another edition of Capitol Happenings. Thanks for being with us. Closing thoughts.
I'm looking forward. I always look forward to session on Monday. And
you like going to work?
Of course. The first day I don't, I'm walking out of here. But it will be exciting. I invite everyone to come down to the State House if you wish to watch us, or if you want to watch us, to stream it live in.gov. And we're doing the people's business here, and I encourage everybody to participate in it.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Again, don't forget, you can check out a podcast anytime you want. We're on SoundCloud and iTunes. Just search Central Indiana Today. You can also find us under YouTube as well. If you want to watch, if people want to look at us, yeah, you can do that there at YouTube as well. And don't forget, you can also hear us on radio affiliate, our home station, WYRZ 98.9 out of Hendricks County. For State Senator Jim Merritt, I'm Rob Kendall saying have yourself a great week.